Hello. I wanted to talk about this screenwriting challenge that I gave myself this year. The thought process behind it was that I want to practice screenwriting in my spare time. I've had lots of fun in like 2017 and 2018, just like anytime I'm bored, I just like imagine a movie or a TV show that I would like to be watching that doesn't exist, and I imagine it in as much detail as I can, and then I just go ahead and write it. And I was having a lot of fun doing that. But I was thinking about how if I want to be collaborating with other people eventually through screenwriting, adaptation is a skill that I should really start to practice more often. And so for 2019, I decided that one of my goals was that I would try to write four feature film screenplays, roughly one every 3 months. So for the first 3 months of 2019, I decided to write a Dragon Ball script. And that was really fun and really easy. And I wasn't expecting it to be easy because um, Dragon Ball is one of my favorite stories, and it's an intimidating idea to take characters that you've loved for years and try to imagine writing in their voice and, writing dialogue for characters like Goku and Bulma and Krillin and trying to have it sound natural in a way. But one of the things that surprised me was that as soon as I started trying to do it, um, it all came together very easily, and I was immediately confident while writing, which is nice. That's the way that I feel when I write characters who I've invented, and so it was a surprise and a relief to start writing this Dragon Ball script and find that I felt the same way about the characters as I did with the other scripts. It's as if it wasn't an adaptation at all, and in that way, um, yeah, it was a surprise, and it was just very. Oh, sorry, I'm distracted. There's a cat in the room. This is the cat. Do you know what a camera is, Chiquita? Okay. Yeah, she's gonna be puttering around. Anyway, so the Dragon Ball script went easier than I was expecting, which was really nice. But the point of the challenge was that it was supposed to be challenging. It was supposed to be difficult. And so finding that this script that I started writing that I expected to be difficult actually turned out to be easy, I was like, oh well, I'm kind of I'm fucking up in a way by like I'm doing myself a disservice. Um, it's like if you went to go to lift a heavy weight and then found that it wasn't actually heavy to you, and then you were didn't level up, didn't make it heavier. You have to like take initiative to try to keep things challenging for yourself in order to grow. So I was thinking, uh, what would make a lot of sense is if Dragon Ball Z is my, let's say Dragon Ball Z is my favorite. What's an example of my least favorite property? And try adapting that. And so naturally, my first thought was Twilight, because I love horror movies and I love vampires as monsters. I think they're just really terrific and compelling, and there's still a ton of possible vampire narratives that haven't been explored in media. And so Twilight is kind of the epitome of like a missed opportunity where someone says, because like the core idea of Twilight, the core premise in a way, the idea of like uh, teenage girl falls in love with a mysterious dude at school and then discovers that he's a vampire. That's not the worst setup in terms of a story. That's like, um, to me, it kind of has its roots in like uh, schlocky, B movies from the 50s. Like, I dated a teenage werewolf or something like that. So, but when you think of Twilight in a modern context, you don't think of like a fun, schlocky horror movie. You think of like kind of angsty and not particularly self aware romance fiction. And also, as romance fiction, it's riddled with a lot of unpleasant stereotypes and tropes that I think a lot of people who approach narrative with sort of a, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Basically, I'm beating around the bush. What I'm trying to say is a lot of people really fucking don't like Twilight, and I don't even. I mean, Twilight to me is one of those like funny bad things where like because it's so not what I would want to do, it's funny to watch because they're just doing tons of stuff in those movies where I'm like, no, you see, it's boring. Like I think the vampires are overpowered, and it bothers me that none of the human characters ever punches one of them in the face. Or I think at one point she punches Jacob in the face, but then it's like the joke is like she broke her hand by doing it. That kind of stuff bothers me because I enjoy genre fiction that's more like Scream, where people being chased by the ghost face killer in Scream are constantly turning around and chucking stuff at him and trying to beat the shit out of the guy. And that to me makes it really cathartic and relatable and interesting. But yeah, you can really tell when you watch a Twilight movie that the people making that movie just have um, priorities that are different than the priorities of someone who really loves horror. And I think that's just a byproduct of Stephanie Meyer not being a very big horror fan. Um, anyway, the reason I wanted to make this video is because I encountered an interesting problem while trying to write this Twilight script, which is good, ultimately, because the whole point of the challenge was that it was supposed to be difficult. And so, discovering that it was difficult, I was like, oh, okay, good. Hooray, I did it. Great job, Aiden. You've successfully come up with a difficult idea. So yeah, I'm trying to write this Twilight script. I'm thinking of it as like a Twilight reboot for 2019. It's as if someone has hired. It's as if they're going to make a Twilight movie regardless, and I've been hired to write the script. And I'm trying to pretend as if the money's already in my account, and so I have to do it. And it's too late to back out. You gotta fucking deliver a script. So it's fucking what, May 20 something? Let me check. Yeah, I'm early. It's May 19th. So I'm more than halfway through my 3-month schedule on this thing. And I tell you what, the Dragon Ball script, I started writing it on January 1st. I was done by February 10th, and it was 142 pages. That's because I was having fun writing it, and it was easy. This Twilight script has not been easy, and it's not been fun. I think a large part of that is because I don't have the same grasp of the characters that I did when I was writing about Goku and Bulma and Krillin. When it comes to... Oh, sorry, I'm distracted because I just got a text. Everyone I know is getting sick. That's what the text was about. I was actually sick recently. Anyway, I didn't have a very good grasp of the characters. Bella, Edward, Jacob. It was just very difficult for me to find a way to write those characters where it didn't feel like I was just mocking them. Because, it would be really easy to do a version of the story where I just write it as if I'm Bella and the whole thing is a joke. That would be really easy, and that would be really fun to write. But again, you're not trying to just treat it like a joke. You're trying to imagine that you've been tasked with taking it seriously. And so I just started writing the script, and I was plowing ahead, and anytime I was concerned, I would just like, nope, fuck it, just keep going. That's my usual protocol when I'm writing. I feel like it's very important to get the first draft done as quickly as you can, because creativity builds momentum, and it's not good to let that momentum stagnate. But, pardon me. But with this Twilight script, I got to about page 30, and I realized that like, realistically, I should have had a better idea of what was coming next. And really, I had no idea what page 40 was going to look like. I had no idea what page 50 was going to look like. And I had no idea what, even specifically from the book, I was going to adapt and what I was going to change and what I was failing as a writer, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I stopped, and I jettisoned the first 30 pages, and now I'm starting again from scratch. The reason I think that the reason that this draft is not working, and the reason that I'm having so much trouble with it, it's not just that the task of writing a Twilight script is challenging for me. It's that I did not do any work to put together an outline, and that's what this video is about. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I'm feeling more and more lately, which is that if I'm going to write a feature script, more than any other writing project, I really, really need to prioritize the outline first, because I was thinking at first, like, oh yeah, I love Dragon Ball, and so Dragon Ball was easy to write, and I don't love Twilight so much, and so that is why it's difficult. But to be honest, I did do an outline for Dragon Ball, and maybe part of that is because I liked Dragon Ball. I was excited to do an outline for Dragon Ball, but less so for Twilight. But I underestimated the value of the outline. I started writing, and at a certain point I realized that I was lost and didn't know what I was doing. And so now I just spent my morning watching other movies and other romantic comedies and things like that to put together an outline for this thing that I'm trying to write. And when it came to the Dragon Ball movie, I did the same thing. I would look at similar sort of fantasy adventure narratives that I was interested in drawing inspiration from, especially large ensemble fantasy adventure stories. So things like 2009 Star Trek, 1977 Star Wars, Shrek. Not quite as large of a cast, but Shrek, I know it's a meme, but I really like the way that Shrek has a very simple way of introducing, like, main character, and then very next scene is secondary character, and then very next scene after that is first guy meets the second guy in the third scene. And so it has that kind of very simple linear progression. And then you compare that to something like Harry Potter, where the first installment of Harry Potter is highly episodic in its plot structure, because it's all about introducing the audience to this one thing that might not pay off in this movie, but is a thing that you need to understand about the universe in order for, the series of stories to make sense. So they explain, like, Gringotts, Quidditch, wands, broomsticks, just all these, like, little things that you need to understand about. And, those things do pay off within the first movie, but they're also just general things that you need to understand in order to grasp the kind of world of Harry Potter. And also the way that Harry Potter has to introduce you to a large cast of characters. another movie that I looked at for that was The Fellowship of the Ring, and how one of the things that I noticed as like a through line through a lot of narratives is the idea of introducing the world, the villain, the MacGuffin in kind of a pre-title sequence, and then segueing from the titles to meeting the main character. And so little things like that I would take as inspiration and use them to construct this Dragon Ball script. And so part of the adaptation process that I've been learning about has been about observing what works in other narratives and trying to figure out how to transplant the best elements of those into the new story that I'm trying to put together. And so this turned out to be a very beneficial thing for me to do when I was writing the Dragon Ball script, and then I jumped the gun and was cocky and arrogant going into this Twilight thing, and it did not go well, and now I have to start again from scratch with half as much time to get it done. And I feel like, yeah, good, fuck you, Aiden, that's what you deserve. Next time, do the fucking outline. So, to friends or, just people that I know that are interested in this sort of thing, I wanted to make a video to kind of elaborate on this thing that I've been thinking about recently, which is that, in the past, I really enjoy just starting writing without knowing what's going to happen next. I've heard the author Joe Lansdale talk about how he likes to write in that sort of way. I like to write that way too, but I think, just in my personal recent experience, the writing that I do without a plan usually does not come together in a very satisfying way. I can make it up as I go along, but it's very clear that that's what I'm doing. And so for scripts that are meant to be cohesive and sort of satisfying in a way, and I mean satisfying in terms of like setup and payoff. The idea of, well, I'm not gonna. You get the idea. Something is like, oh, this is my famous chainsaw, and then you go like, oh, okay, so presumably the chainsaw will come back in the third act. I think in the usual example it's a gun, but I like chainsaws. So yeah, if you're working on something and it's not going very well and you're having trouble getting it done, I definitely recommend doing an outline. Bye.